By 2021, Nike's market valuation reached $280 billion, a peak that established it as the largest sports brand on the planet. Their direct-to-consumer channel, the digital ecosystem of apps and websites built to sell directly to buyers, was generating $18.7 billion on its own. To understand the scale of those digital sales, consider that in 2022, Nike's D2C sales alone were worth nearly $80 billion. By optimizing for short-term margin efficiency on a spreadsheet, the company systematically dismantled the real-world advantages that had made the brand legendary. In a traditional distribution model, a $100 shoe sells to consumers for $200. This leaves an $80 gap split between middlemen. In 2017, Nike's consumer direct offense severed ties with wholesale partners, selling directly through their apps to capture that middleman margin for themselves. This pivot had an immediate physical impact. As Nike pulled its products from wholesale stores, thousands of shelves in local retailers and neighborhood sports shops stood empty. Retailers needed products to fill that space. Brands that were once considered too small to notice, like Hoka and On Running, immediately occupied the real estate Nike left behind. These retailers didn't just display the new shoes, they built their entire business operations around them. They signed contracts and set long-term inventory targets that made these new brands a permanent part of the store's ecosystem. By focusing purely on digital profit margins, Nike voluntarily surrendered the physical distribution network, making them the default choice for athletes around the world. Internally, the company was also changing. Under John Donahoe, Nike replaced specialized sport-specific departments like running and basketball with generic categories like men's, women's, and kids. This reorganization forced Nike to behave like a general fashion retailer. The focus shifted away from performance innovation and toward driving high sales volume through generic products. This move ignored the company's historical identity. For decades, Nike focused on athletic motivation and elite performance, a strategy encapsulated by the "Just Do It" slogan and their partnerships with the world's top athletes. While Nike executives optimized conversion rates on shopping apps, smaller competitors focused on product design, creating newer and technically superior shoes for runners. Dashboards are efficient at tracking app downloads, but they cannot measure a decline in product quality or a loss of cultural relevance. Nowhere was this blindness more apparent than in China. At Nike's peak in 2021, the Chinese market was responsible for nearly 20% of the company's total revenue. But data points failed to capture a massive shift in consumer sentiment. A movement called guochao led young Chinese buyers to reject Western imports in favor of domestic brands that reflected national pride. By 2022, the domestic brand Anta overtook Nike to become the #1 sportswear brand in China by revenue. Because Nike was looking at past sales data rather than real-time cultural shifts, they were caught off guard by a market they once dominated. When the pandemic ended and shoppers returned to physical stores, the limitations of Nike's digital ecosystem became clear. Consumers were back in the real world, but Nike shoes were no longer on the shelves. The resulting fallout led to John Donahoe stepping down in 2024. To fix the culture, the board brought 32-year veteran Elliott Hill out of retirement. Hill faces a difficult environment. The retail shelf space is now held by stronger competitors, and the brand no longer holds the same position in critical markets like China. Nike's struggle serves as a warning against treating the removal of intermediaries as a guaranteed shortcut to profitability. Trading long-term brand fundamentals like retail presence and product innovation for short-term margin efficiency is a fast path to irrelevance.